Hi guys, welcome back to English 202. This is Friday, January 14th. I just want to go over a few things with regard to how we're sort of going to look at your essay writing this semester. And this, for some of you, this is going to be a review if you had an English 252 or if you had any other English 252 with any other instructor in prior semesters. So um, we're going to look at this today. It's not going to be, I'm going to keep you that long with this presentation, with this lecture. But just to sort of recap what's going to take place next week, we're going to look at Elements of Poetry on Monday, which is January 17th. And then on Wednesday and Friday, we're going to look at The Narrow Road to the Deep North by the Japanese poet Basho. So be on the lookout for lectures on that. The Elements of Poetry on Monday will give us a good foundation of substructure of what I expect us to look for with regard to The Narrow Road to the Deep North and any other poetry we look at this semester. And then we'll do a deep dive into the actual collection of poetry by Basho. Okay, so the way you're going to be graded, and I briefly covered this, hopefully you've listened to the MLA lecture. If not, I implore you to do so this weekend, today or this weekend. Um, the way we're going to really grade your essays and your essay writing this semester is twofold. One would be, of course, the content. You know, how well are you presenting an argument on paper, and how well are you providing evidence towards that argument by pulling from the primary and secondary sources. So the content of your argumentation, right? And that's basically what these essays are. You're argumenting and attempting to persuade the reader on behalf of a thesis statement of some sort, and then you're pulling examples from the texts. Uh, and then the second part of that equation, of course, will be how well does it adhere to modern language associations formatting style and the dictums which they lay out. And it it's this document here that I've every semester I present, and I'll post this to Blackboard so you can access it at your leisure, really outlines in great detail the differences between an A range paper versus a B range versus a C range, etc. So I'm just going to read straight from the text here. Calculations of the participation grade, and this rubric is directly what I'm directly going to look at. I have it memorized by now, but it's what I'm directly going to access when I after I get past the content and how well you're argumenting on paper. I'll access this document and with regard to how well it adheres to MLA, grammatical errors, punctuation, things of that nature, uh, and how literary and analytical your essay is. So calculations of the participation grade, your participating. Okay, we're gonna move past that. That's we really don't have that component of this class like we do in other English classes. If you had me prior. So general criteria for the evaluation of essays. A range. Thesis. You have a thesis statement, argument, and the content demonstrate the awareness of complexity and contradiction in approach to the text writing. Sorry, texts. Writing shows evidence of abstract, critical, and careful original thought. So you're synthesizing an argument on your own. Um, Thesis provides a strong, coherent, critical argument which is developed through the course of the essay. So you're developing the argument. You present an idea to us through the thesis statement, and you start to build a coherent argument throughout the essay. It's not just haphazardly constructed on the page where there's no rhyme or reason to your argumentation and there's no evidence to your claim. Right? We have to have evidence to our claim. Paragraphs and sections of the argument are structured and linked logically and fully integrated into overall argument. So again, the essay doesn't meander in areas that has nothing to do with the thesis statement. We always have to come back to the thesis statement in our argumentation, in our essay, and reiterate that for the reader to orientate themselves back to that. The essay is structured by its argument rather than by descriptive analysis or chronological explanation. And all that means is you're synthesizing a new argument on the page that you came up with a thesis statement. You're reaching out to the various texts, primary and secondary sources, in order to buttress your own argument. And you're not just given a book report. You know, you're not going to say, well, um, Basho's collection of poetry, The Narrow Road to the Deep North. Was interesting because he traveled around Japan, ancient Japan, and wrote about nature. Right? It's not enough. All right, you got to have another substantive sort of detail that you place within the essay and that you explore. So just look at the third bulletized point for A range. Careful, detailed reading of the text, demonstrating a critical and analytical engagement. Um, quotation and explication of key textual passages central to the argument. So you're presenting your thesis statement, you're allowing the reader, myself, to understand your argument, what you're about to argument on behalf of, and maybe you summarize your argument, the various points that you want to make within this essay are X, Y, and Z. Then that springboards into the body paragraph of where we explore X, Y, and Z. You explicate, right? Let's see. Close critical attention given to such denotative aspects of the text as grammar and syntax, diction and plot, character, and connotative aspects such as figure of speech, narration, voice, imagery, and theme. So these aspects I think will be more solidified, and you'll be able to comprehend them to a greater degree once we explore on Monday the elements of poetry. So next to last bullet point, writing is concise. So we always attempt to be concise. We attempt to what's called compression. And that's poetry moves in the best way of compression, right? You leave out the fluff, you leave out words that mean nothing, and you place everything, great emphasis and foregrounding of language. So we're going to do the same with our writing, right? We're going to attempt to write an essay that doesn't meander, like I said before, maunder all over the place, but it is concise. Even elegant your writing will be. That's what an A range will be. It's sophisticated, it's seductive, it's elegant, it's poetic in some ways, it's concise, it's prosaic, and unmarred by occasional errors. So you might have some errors, and punctuations in some realms can be debated when a comma is applied versus a semicolon versus a colon versus a em dash. But I would say an A range, and there is room for a few errors that one would miss on proofreading. Vocabulary is appropriate for level of analysis. So your language, your vocabulary, the lexicon of which you pull from in an A-range paper, should be equal to whatever it is you're exploring. It should be academic because these are academic essays, and it shouldn't be what's called conversational writing, which would be just you talking to a friend. And I've had papers like that. I've had students turn in papers where they use the same sort of language and abbreviations in colloquial terms you would use in a text message, right? We can't do that. That would put us in the I think it put us in a D range if you turn in any paper that uses text language, text message language. Incorporates critical terms appropriate to literary analysis, and those literary terms you're going to receive through elements of poetry. So you're going to be able to use that. And I give the lecture on elements of poetry, and I give you the list of literary terms so that you can provide an academic A-level paper if you apply those terms. It gives you a language, a lexicon to pull from, right? All right, let's look at B range. A lot of the same things. Clear thesis. We had clear thesis up here. Convincing argument and content demonstrate understanding of the text and related issues. Thesis statement is analytical, not merely descriptive. You're not just going to describe what the book does or the characters within the book. You're going to apply it with academic rigor, the thesis statement. And the academic rigor will come from the elements, and whether it's the elements of poetry or the elements of fiction, elements of drama. Paragraphs and sections of the argument are structured and linked logically. We said that before. That's great. Notice, let's go back to here. Mla formatting is used correctly throughout the essay, so that's an A range. So that starts to break down with the B. Both the grammar and the punctuation start to break down with minor errors, not just one or two we see in the A range, but we start to get MLA formatters used with some errors and inconsistencies, right? So that's starting to sort of dissolve your ability to use MLA correctly, formatting correctly. And I'll tell you exactly where you're making the mistakes, both in your argumentation, your analytical analysis of the text, whatever artifact it is we're reading, and then of course where you're straying from your MLA in grammar. C range. So just in making a few MLA mistakes, right, it knocks you into the B range. And then use of MLA format in the C range is evident, but seriously flawed, right? You go automatically to a C range, with that. So I can't tell you how much I want to throw MLA into sharp relief using it correctly this semester. C contains a thesis statement and attempt at argument, but demonstrates only a literal comprehension of the text. So you're just interpreting the text to a very casual, unacademic, no rigor applied, as if you're talking to a friend, right? and just simply your impressions of what the text is, as opposed to relying upon outside sources. You synthesize an argument, you reach out to outside authorities, and you borrow from their ability to be experts in the field. Thesis is clear, but perhaps descriptive, summative, rather than critical and analytical. Just look at the second bulletized points in C range. Parts of the argument are linked illogically, incoherently. So maybe you mentioned something in your thesis statement that you want to explore, and then you don't explore it, or you really stray away from what the thesis statement mentioned, that was very detailed in the thesis statement and very precise, great precision in the thesis statement, and then you mention it as a very rough, undetailed point within your essay without exploring it with the same amount of weight that you put within the thesis statement. So think about that. Equaling the academic rigor and precision of the thesis statement within the body paragraphs of your essay. Third bullet point shows attempts at close reading. Textual evidence is summarized rather than quoted and analyzed, or there is insufficient quotation. So you insufficiently provide the academic outside authority of reaching out to other experts in the field, and you're not applying those correctly with direct quotes, paraphrases, or summarizing. Let's see. Texts are over-quoted and quotation lacks sufficient. So it's a fine line, isn't it? It's a tightrope. You can underquote, as we see in the C range, or you can overquote. And the reason we say overquoting is an issue is because the quotes start to take over the essay. So you might have heard of what's called a block quote. It's where you quote 4 lines of direct quote or more, right? So I've had some essays where there's like 5 block quotes in a row. So, and they're just paragraphs of you quoting someone else, and you're not linking those ideas in any substantive way back to your thesis statement. And all of a sudden, the outside authority that you're reaching out to and you're quoting from is writing the essay for you, and we can't have that. You got to be able to link the ideas together through your analysis of the text. Let's see. Just next to last bullet point, some difficulties with fundamentals of writing, errors of syntax. So syntax is simply, and we get this a lot if I go to another country and I don't speak the language, say, and I don't speak French, I might put the verb, bury the verb in the sentence as opposed to connecting it to the subject of the sentence. So the order of which you place words in sentences is what syntax is. Grammar, punctuation, and poor word choice create difficulties of comprehension. So at this point, understanding exactly what your text is attempting to convey to the reader, what it's attempting to communicate, is lost. It's lost. So because there's so many errors of syntax and grammar, punctuation, the content can't come through, and I can't understand what you're attempting to argument on behalf of. So we have to watch out for that. And of course, the use of Mla formatting is evident, but seriously flawed. So it goes from inconsistent in the B to seriously flawed. Almost a no attempt. And that's what we get fully in a D range. No evidence of Mla formatting whatsoever. And an F, of course. No evidence whatsoever. So F, let's look at that. There's little or no thesis or argument. So the individual that wrote an essay on the narrow road to the north, to the deep north by Basho, would have had just said, hey, it was a great book, and this is why. So very undetailed, imprecise thesis statement. Paragraphs and sentences are discontinuous, no apparent order. And I would say a good rule of thumb is just mirror what your thesis statement is. So if you summarize your thesis statement, if you summarize your points next to your thesis statement, right, that you want to make, say you want to make 4 points about a book that we read this semester, why not summarize those next to your thesis statement and then go in that order as you write the essay, starting with your strongest point, right, and then tapering down to your weakest. Little or no evidence of close reading. Writing is incoherent, suffers from serious errors of syntax and grammar. No evidence in Mla formatting. All right. So content, 2 things, right, that we summarized at the very beginning of this lecture. Content and Mla formatting style are the 2 main ideas that I'm going to explore with regard to sitting down and grading your essays, right? So every essay that you write this semester has to have a works cited page, right? That doesn't count as part of the pagination of the 3 to 5 pages double-spaced. Okay. So we're getting the foundation of what I expect this semester. We got the Mla foundation. We got the Rubric foundation. We went over the course outline, that foundation. We're shifting some of the dates. I'll update you as we go over that. Is that sort of is in a fluid state. So starting Monday, the 17th, January 17th, I'll send you an email just like I did today with the Elements of Poetry lecture, YouTube lecture. And then starting Wednesday, we're dive into the narrow road to the deep north by Basho, and that'll continue till Monday, or sorry, till Friday. And we're going to touch upon it Monday as well, next week, but the week after that as well. So sit down with the book this weekend. Sit down with it next week. Uh, we're going to have a reader response coming up, probably not next week, but the week after that. We have to push it to there so we can properly explore the elements of poetry and with regard and press that through the lens that is a narrow road to the deep north. Yeah, and so hopefully this all makes sense. It'll make more sense once we receive the elements of poetry lecture. Sit down with the collection, Basho's collection of poetry. Try to sort of explore how it uses imagery, how it uses nature, its form, right? Is it a haiku? Uh, we're going to look at those forms next week as well, or explore that. I know you haven't received a lecture on it. Just we're going to approach it as a preliminary sort of idea at this point. It'll make more sense after Monday's lecture. Okay, as always, please email me if you have any questions or concerns. If not, there's a fairly short lecture. I will talk to you next week by sending you an email with a YouTube link. Take care. Talk to you guys later. Bye.